Hi, this is John Harcher, and welcome to episode 30 of Keep On Grooving. Today we'll take a look at the second half of the U.S. leg of the 1970 tour through June and July. There are some missing shows in here and some that may show up eventually. We'll also see how the set list started evolving a bit once he started working at Electric Lady Studios. Episode 30, Jimi Hendrix Live, 1970, June 5th through August 1st. With the Berkeley shows behind them, Mike Jeffrey switched things up a bit and scheduled a few extra shows in the middle of the week to make up for the concerts missed back in May. They returned to Cowboy Country starting in Dallas on June 5th. Now, the availability of this show is interesting. There was definitely some kind of film performance that yielded a videotape of some kind back in the day. Now, this tape was offered to Mike Jeffrey back in October 1970, right after Jimi died, but he passed on it and then disappeared from view for decades. There are rumors Experienced Hendrix has managed to get a hold of it, but no one has seen or heard anything from it. We can hope at some point, if it does exist, it will get released. The songs people are relatively confident were performed are Spanish Castle Magic, Foxy Lady, Machine Gun, Freedom, Easy Rider, Star Spangled Banner, Purple Haze, and Voodoo Child Slight Return. These songs likely would have added up to only 42 to 45 minutes, so at least 2 more songs were probably done. The next night they were in Houston, and so far no recording of this show has turned up at all. But the Hoffman Board's resident Jack Webb, Mark 7, discovered a contemporary article that runs down practically the entire set list. Most interestingly, the show started off with Johnny Be Good, done for the 3rd time in a month. Next was Hear My Train a Comin', a little odd for a second song. Fire, Foxy Lady, and I Don't Live Today followed. The Are You Experienced era song continued with an earlier than usual in the set Purple Haze and Red House. Machine Gun followed, then it was Star Spangled Banner and Hey Joe, and the show ending with Voodoo Child. Strange that absolutely nothing has turned up from this show, but after 50 years, it's not likely it'll turn up now. They were in Tulsa Sunday night, and we do have a tape of that show. After a lengthy tune-up, they start off with a quick Spanish Castle Magic that moves right into Stone Free. Jimi starts doing Hey Baby, then does the intro twice before the tape cuts out and comes back in the middle of Hey Joe. Freedom is up next with a very extended solo, followed by the last I Don't Live Today, sounding very crisp with an unfortunate tape cut in the middle. Foxy Lady is a little messy towards the end. Red House exists on the tape for around 3 seconds. Message to Love is very strong from start to finish. Roomful of Mirrors is really fast with a pretty well done intro. The Star Spangled Banner gets a very long Hey Baby flamenco-esque intro. Purple Haze is solid enough. Easy Rider is very late in the set, next to last. It's assumed Voodoo Child ended the show, but unfortunately the tape runs out. Now, according to Ultimate Hendrix, Monday, June 7th was the first day Studio A and Electric Lady Studios had some recording done there. Eddie Kramer played some things on piano. They listened to them and they sounded good, so the studio was finally ready for a recording once Jimi got back. Of course, this was the week Jeffrey scheduled all those midweek shows. First up was Tuesday night in Memphis. Supposedly there is a tape of the show and in good quality. Experienced Hendrix does have it, but it's not up on the YouTube channel yet, which suggests they may plan on doing something more official with it. Depending on the quality, it would almost certainly be a dagger release, but they could be thinking about using it as a bonus disc a la Electric Lady 50th anniversary set. I wouldn't suggest that unless the tape is really good. Anyway, the track list looks to be Freedom, Loverman, Red House, Message to Love, Hear My Train a Comin', Easy Rider, Roomful of Mirrors, Machine Gun, Hey Joe, Foxy Lady, Star Spangled Banner, Purple Haze, and Voodoo Child. No Spanish Castle Magic this time out. The next night, on the 9th, they made up for the missed date from Evansville, Indiana, and there is a tape of this one, though it's really muffled, kind of like Rerun hid it under his shirt at the Doobie Brothers show. Spanish Castle Magic and Fire are pretty quick. Loverman is a little slower than usual. Red House is really fast, barely 6 minutes. Foxy Later is among the shorter ones. Once I get the Machine Gun, the tape gets a little clearer and then gets muddy again. Message to Love gets an interesting intro as Jimi redoes the opening Machine Gun riffs, then heads right into the regular song in a relatively short version. Freedom is good. Hear My Train Coming goes right into the Star Spangled Banner, then into Purple Haze, and then the finale Voodoo Child. Tape is very muddy, but if you want one that concentrates on Billy's bass playing, well, this one is for you. That's mostly what it picked up. After a few days off, they did one show over the weekend in Baltimore. The tape of this one has been around quite a while. Straight Ahead, still in its Pass It On incarnation, starts off the show in strong fashion. Loverman, he pretty much had down by this point where he could do it in his sleep and it still sound good. Machine Gun gets the haunting intro to it. Easy Rider is punchy, then goes right into Red House, which had sort of settled into the 7-8 minute range normally. Message to Love is solid. Hey Joe is okay. Sounds like one of the versions where he was like, all right, I'll do it for them. Freedom is a little slower than usual. Hear My Train Coming actually compares favorably to the Berkeley one, with a little of the tone of the April 9th, 1969 studio version. So a little fierce there. Jimi does a modified intro to Room Full of Mirrors, so he doesn't have to do the race up the neck twice, but he still doesn't get it right. Good version otherwise. Foxy Lady, Purple Haze, then Star Spangled Banner, and finally Voodoo Child are our usual set closers. And the scratch is back again. The tape experience Hendrix has on their channel isn't the best. Try looking out for the ones that are an hour and 12 minutes. They all seem to sound clearer. Once back in New York, Electric Lady Studios was finally open for business. The band did some recording as well as welcome visitors Steve Winwood and Chris Wood. Once the weekend arrived, it was back to the original concept of going back on tour on the weekends. Friday night, June 19th, began a West Coast swing with a show in Albuquerque. Not only doesn't it look like there's any tape of the show, there doesn't appear to be a set list anywhere. I wonder if the taper missed that left turn. We can speculate it probably contained the usual mix of oldies and newer ones. The question would be, did any of the outliers make it in at this point? Did he do Fire, Hey Joe? Did something get dropped? Did Hey Baby make it in? If someone out there went to the show, hey, please let us know. The next day, they went up to San Bernardino in California. All the Watchtower makes a rare appearance as a set opener. Starts out a little slow, but then Jimi gets warmed up. Room Full of Mirrors gets its longest live workout since Royal Albert Hall, over 6 minutes long. The two Bands of Gypsies numbers, Machine Gun and Message to Love, follow. Hear My Train Coming is a little on the quick side, around 7 minutes or so. Then the run of oldies. Foxy Lady in the 5-minute range, a halfway version of Hey Joe, Purple Haze, and Voodoo Child. Looks like the scratch is back for good, it seems. He also does a little Midnight Lightning, Keep on Grooving towards the end, and then the tape runs out right. He's about to do the final flourish with his teeth. Kind of a short show at 10 songs under 50 minutes. It was also a relatively small crowd of just over 7,000 people. There are several tapes of this one out there. Actually, the 47-minute one sounds the best. Not great, but the best of what's out there. On Sunday, June 21st, they play in front of an even smaller crowd at Ventura County Fairgrounds, likely just off the highway. Wonder if there were any alligator lizards in the air. Probably not for a few years. It doesn't appear there's any audio of this. Lots of pictures out there, though, and there is a set list. Spanish Castle Magic, Fire, Machine Gun, Red House, Foxy Lady, Purple Haze, Voodoo Child Sight Return. Little on the short side, may have only been 40 minutes long, unless there were other songs played. Now, here's a weird thing. Setlist.com has two shows listed on June 23rd in Denver and June 25th in Pittsburgh, but no set list for either. Not only does Ultimate Hendrix not have either of these shows listed, but they have June 25th down as a very busy day in the studio. This was also one of the days Jimi made a list of songs he was working on and included the Get the Highway Child tape note. However, there is an image online of a ripped ticket from the Denver show, but nothing from Pittsburgh on the 25th. Wikipedia also has the Denver show listed as part of the Cry of Love tour, but not Pittsburgh. So I'm going to go with the show in Denver did happen, but there's no tape. However, the Pittsburgh show did not happen. Now, a couple days later, over the weekend, they only did one show in Boston, and it ended up being a very highly regarded one of the tour. Stone Free kicked off the show, and it was among the longer versions, running over 5 minutes. Loverman's pretty quick. Red House is in around 8 minutes with a lot of enthusiasm. Now, Freedom sounds like it comes from a lower sounding source. It's a little muffled compared to everything else. Foxy Lady is a quick but fierce one. Purple Haze sounds like Jimi has a tuning issue right there at the beginning before he's able to get the song going, but it mostly recovers. The ending morphs right into the Star Spangled Banner, which then moves right into All on the Watchtower, with some interesting flourishes added in along the way. Message to Love is crisp, on the shorter side of 4 minutes or so, but solid. Fire is also relatively short, right around the length of the studio cut. He needs a quick retuning before heading into Spanish Castle Magic, also barely longer than the studio version. He almost starts to do Voodoo Child, but then remembers, hey, doesn't this song start with scratching? And then does that before the rest of the song. Solid end to a solid show. After a very productive week at Electric Lady that included future releases Dolly Dagger, Beginning, and Hey Baby, as well as the instrumental that will become Paley Gap, the band headed south to play the giant Atlanta Pop Festival over 4th of July weekend. This show has had several piecemeal releases over the years, with songs included on Bandit Gypsies 2, Johnny Be Good, and Cornerstones, before a large portion of the show was on disc 4 of the Stages box set, as well as a video that appeared in the United Kingdom only. Then in 2015, the almost entire set was released on either Freedom, the CD audio version, or Electric Church, the video version. Fire starts off with a lot of enthusiasm, with Billy chiming in loudly on the chorus and a raucous Outside Women Blues section. Jimi starts Loverman, then decides to introduce it as he's playing. Really heavy univibe on this version. Spanish Castle Magic is along the lines of the Live at Winterland version, then goes a little out of tune at the end. Red House is pretty subdued until around 4 minutes in, when he really lets go. Jimi was modifying the intro to Roomful of Mirrors so it wouldn't keep sliding off the neck. This one is a pretty good adaptation of it. Hear My Train A-Comin' is almost as intense as Berkeley, but ends up being a little shorter and kind of trails off at the end. Message of Love starts out a little bit tentative, and then Mitch can't quite get the groove right, so it's a little bit of a shaky song. All Along the Watchtower, which in this show got inadvertently renamed as All Around the Watchtower, starts off in the wrong key, but then Jimi moves it into the right one for the rest of the song. Freedom is solid. Foxy Lady has the distortion verging on being out of control. Not the only time in this show. Purple Haze has a Star Spangled Banner false start. Hey Joe has the cool flamenco type opening. Voodoo Child is dislodged from its usual spot at the end of the set, but has the scratch intro back. Then the finale begins with Stone Free done pretty quickly, yet it's among the longer versions. The Star Spangled Banner is done with fireworks going off overhead. Feedback gets out of hand at times when he makes his way through it. He then goes right into Straight Ahead, and then the aborted Hey Baby. It's actually not bad for the first 2 minutes, and then one string goes out of tune, and it just collapses from there, and after another 2 minutes of trying, Jimi calls it a day. A decent set overall, some inspired moments, but a little lethargy here and there. The next day, they were supposed to do 2 shows in Miami, but because they arrived late from Atlanta, they only got to do 1. There's not a full or partial set list for the show anywhere. One suspects it was pretty similar to Atlanta. After that, it was almost 2 straight weeks of studio recording before they had their next show, a festival held on Randall's Island called New York Pop. A lot of people were promised to show up, a few did. The show was recorded and filmed, but there were just a lot of bad vibes out there. The footage ended up being used in the film The Day the Music Died, some kind of protest film, but it didn't come out like it was supposed to. It finally showed up in the 80s on VHS. Honestly, it's more a relic of its time than Rainbow Bridge. That's how tied to the days it is. But despite all that, Jimi performed a spirited set. Stone Free starts off the show. In the middle, he slams on the Univibe to the point where you almost can't hear the playing. You just hear the shaking so much. He backs off, and the version is among the longest of the 1970 tour. Fire harkens back to the 1969 versions. The version of Red House here first showed up on Jimi Hendrix concerts in 1982 and has been a fan favorite since then. It's a bit more somber than most of the other 1970 versions, sort of presaging the one at the Isle of Wight. Message of Love gets a decent workout. Loverman is its usual self. Mitch seems to be having a little timekeeping trouble during All Along the Watchtower. Fox Lady is pretty good under the circumstances. Easy Rider has an interesting opening where Jimi and Mitch do a kind of back and forth playing their own intros, something they never did anywhere else, as far as I can tell. Star Spangled Banner captured the chaos of the moment pretty well. Purple Haze is so noisy it almost gets completely out of control. Then, after telling the crowd to F off as he tries to thank some of his friends, he does Voodoo Child's Slight Return. It ends with a very weird moment of noise that almost sounds like Beethoven's Ninth. Ode to Joy, the set is over, I guess. Like Red House, the set overall was maybe a bit of a precursor to Isle of Wight. The band played well, but everything around it was chaotic. After another extremely productive week at Electric Lady, it was time to take a longer break after a couple of concerts, of course. They headed to the West Coast for a return to the San Diego Sports Arena on July 25th, a year and 2 months after their recorded show. Again, it doesn't appear that this show was recorded or a tape has not shown up in over 50 years, so unlikely we'll get one now. The set list looks to be very similar to the one the year before, but with a few new songs mixed in. Fire, Hey Joe, Foxy Lady, Red House, Machine Gun, Loverman, Hey Baby New Rising Sun, Star Spangled Banner, Purple Haze, and Voodoo Child's Slight Return. A review in the Evening Tribune mentioned they came back for an encore of a new song from the next album. Looking at this list, the most likely suspects not mentioned are Freedom, Easy Rider, Roomful of Mirrors. The last one appeared to have been shuffled out of heavy rotation, though it was done in Atlanta. Either of the other two remaining songs would have made good encores, though I think Easy Rider works better as a show final song. Jimi's last show in the continental United States was the next night, appropriately enough, in his hometown of Seattle. Fire is solid enough. Message to Love has a drum solo in the middle, so soon. Loverman and Freedom are good. Red House is happy again in the 8-minute range. A Quick Foxy Lady is next, followed by Machine Gun, which was right in the Star Spangled Banner. That's followed by Purple Haze with a bit of a wild ending. Mitch chimes in with a 4-minute drum solo that turns a la the Grateful Dead into Hear My Train A-Comin'. Really late in the set for this, so normally it's a first half song. He tosses in the Keep On Grooving lyrics, then brings the song to a close. He ends the set with Voodoo Child's Slight Return. He starts to do the song, but again remembers to do the scratching. You don't do it for so long, you almost forget. Then towards the end, he slows things way down and does Hey Baby, but unfortunately the tape runs out before he gets to the lyrics. There's also around 5 minutes of film footage floating around out there. The audio tape is kind of muddy, but it's what we got. Once the band finished, the rest of the crew headed to Hawaii for the film shoot, while Jimi stayed behind a few days to hang out with his dad and his new family. On July 30th, the concert for the Sensory Experiment, or whatever they were filming for Wave, aka Rainbow Bridge, finally took place. Since we just did the rundown for this within the past year, but it was back in June already, wow. We won't go into too much depth on it. The show started out with an acoustic group, the Gemini Twins. Then Chuck Wine gave the hippy dippy intro, little George Carlin reference there. Then Jimmy, Billy, and Mitch came on stage. First set opened with Spanish Castle Magic, the short, punchy version. Lover Man was next, and remember this has a little hiccup on the official tape, though you can plug in the missing piece from audio tapes. Then the film version begins with the Hey Baby In From the Storm combo. Though a little bit of the intro is not included. Again, it can be gotten from the audience tapes. Message to Love was next, but not filmed. You'd think a Love and Peace picture would want this in there, but they didn't use it. Then comes the absolutely killer Foxy Lady, if you would ask me. I think it's the single best live version they ever did. A very loose Hear My Train a Comin' is followed by an intense Voodoo Child, then Fire and Purple Haze. The film does a very cool mashup of Voodoo Child and Purple Haze. The edit actually works very well for being so stoned as they were. Fire probably should have been before Voodoo Child for show flow purposes, but it is where it is. The second set heavily concentrated on the new material and was played on his Gibson Flying V. The live debut of Dolly Dagger misses a little bit of the intro on the official tape, but it's out there. A brief Villanova Junction leads into Easy Rider. A little snippet of this did appear in the film under a surfing scene. Red House was next. They probably should have flipped this with Message of Love set-wise, done Red House in the first set, Message of Love here, but whatever. Then it was Freedom and the return of Jam back at the house for its second and final live outing. Then a flowing straight ahead into the bit of New Rising Sun as seen in the film. Then on to Race with the Devil and Midnight Lightning Keep on Grooving, a drum solo, and a stone-free finale. Despite its great technical difficulties, to put it mildly, it turned out to be a very good show overall. Episode 20 of Keep on Grooving has more info on the shows in the film. Have a listen to it if you haven't yet. Jimmy's final U.S. show took place a couple days later on Saturday, August 1st in Honolulu. There's a half-hour tape out there and also around 4 minutes of video. The tape includes Straight Ahead, almost exactly like it is on Cry of Love. Easy Rider is its usual short self. Hey Baby gets a long start-to-finish workout. Spanish Castle Magic is the 4-minute variety. Red House is the 7-minute variety, and unfortunately it fades out right before the end of the last verse. You could make it just a little bit more, and that's all they have on tape. Jimmy then stayed in Hawaii for the next week or so before returning to New York, and a lot of mixing and overdubbing over the next 2 weeks to get the album almost ready for release. So the 1970 tour was a generally successful endeavor in terms of performances and audience reception. The oldies were mainly represented by Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, Spanish Castle Magic, and Voodoo Child. Hey Joe was a fairly regular part of the rotation, with Fire and Along the Watchtower being in the set list every 2 or 3 shows, and Stone Free added on later. The songs recently released on LP that were added in were Message to Love, Machine Gun, and the Star Spangled Banner. Lover Man was a regularly featured song, while Hear My Train a Comin' was also every 2 or 3, 4 shows, something like that. From the unreleased songs, Freedom and Easy Rider were the most regularly performed. Hey Baby became a staple later on. Room Full of Mirrors was actually played a bit more often than I thought, but kind of weeded itself out towards the end. And Straight Ahead got an occasional outing. Dolly Dagger and In From the Storm were later additions, but didn't get a chance to become regular parts of the set list. Plus, the Keep on Grooving lyrics showed up every now and then, but only once did we get the full Midnight Lightning. It is surprising how many shows are available in audience recording. As you can tell, I was disappointed when there wasn't one. We know for sure Experienced Hendrix has a copy of the Memphis show, but as I mentioned, it's not posted yet. And also, as mentioned, it's been rumored that the Dallas video has finally turned up and is in their hands, but we haven't seen it. And we have officially recorded shows for Berkeley, Atlanta, Maui, and Isle of Wight, with videos in some form for all of them. The Berkeley material I consider the best overall, but the rest of the shows, all had their moments. So that's it for 1970. I think we'll take on 1969 next, but not next episode. We'll have something a little special for that. Next episode, we'll have a spring break special. we'll take a look at one of Jimi's best-known fellow performers and see what he was doing during the time Hendrix was on the scene. And this time out, it'll be slow hand himself, Eric Clapton. We'll take a look at his career during this period, which included Cream, Blind Faith, guesting with the Beatles, and trading licks with Duane Allman and Derek and the Dominoes. That's next time I Keep On Grooving. I think the podcast is available in even more places than what I mentioned last time, so you can find us just about anywhere. I'm John Harcher. Happy St. Patrick's Day out there, and thanks for listening.